and now perhaps a mosque. MCC Los Angeles, when I think of you and the nearly 15 years that I had the privilege of being your senior pastor, I think of a cast of characters that you all know what I mean, and you all have your lists and your stories. Okay, I'm going to remember Johnny Matthews today. Anybody remember Johnny Matthews? Yes. Was she queer, lesbian, trans? I have no idea. She wore a yarmulke, she was hard of hearing, she had a bad speech impediment, she was noisy, she came late to church, she was argumentative, she talked at the top of her lungs, she always needed a ride, usually from me, and always monopolized newcomers, especially good-looking women. But she was generous, didn't she? Had her bags with her, and one day she had a bunch of fortune cookies with Bible verses inside of them. She gave me one, and I stuck it in my desk. A year later, after she had died, we were in Culver City. The roof was leaking. All hell was breaking loose. I felt overwhelmed. I was desperate. Neil, don't tell me you don't know what I'm talking about. And so, yes, I opened the drawer, and I opened the fortune cookie. I admit it. And it said, "Cast all your cares upon God, because God cares for you." Grace and mercy, angels in strange forms. At her funeral, a very attractive heterosexual woman, who for the first month thought Johnny was just this nice old man, said, "Well, I figured if you could accept her, then surely you could accept me." The first AIDS vigil at MCCLA in late 1986 in downtown Los Angeles. We kept the church open 24 hours, a very scary thing to do on Hill Street. And I was a little worried about security, so I contacted the Guardian Angels, and they stood guard all night at our church through that AIDS vigil. MCCLA fought for the very first AIDS hospices ever built, and then welcomed rent-free on our property the first pediatric AIDS residents ever in the world. Later, many years later, on Sundays, teams of us would go out to hospices all over LA visiting. Some were beautiful, state-of-the-art places. Others were run-down nursing homes. The whole gamut. One of our board members worked for the Broadway department store when it still existed, and you know, they had these gorgeous, large, white plush bears with red ribbons for Christmas. Well, I guess they had too many, wink, wink, because many dozens of them showed up on our doorsteps that Christmas Eve. I went with one team to one of the worst places where drug addicts and old drag queens went to die. We offered one of the bears to one woman who was so grateful she just sobbed. When she could finally speak, she told us she was crying because the next day, Christmas, her mother was bringing her 6-year-old daughter to visit, and she had been fretting all day about having no gift to give her on this last Christmas. And now she had this beautiful bear. That's a quintessential MCCLA story. It is what you do and have done over and over and over again. MCCLA, you loved, touched, prayed for, buried hundreds. We ministered to thousands, and still do, of those affected and infected by HIV/AIDS. I want to say the names out loud of just the clergy who served on my staff during my time who died of AIDS. Reverend Bob Jones, Reverend Jim Harris, Reverend Tom Walker, Reverend Danny Mahoney, Reverend Carlos Jones. There were many others, hundreds of lay people, board, staff, deacons. And I remember when we moved into West Hollywood, and there was that horrible rain, and someone saying to me, "Pastor, did you know there's a hole in the roof?" Well, yes, I did know there was a hole in the roof. I just didn't know what to do about it, because it wouldn't stop raining, and because roofers are very expensive when it's actually raining in Los Angeles. Brad Johnson, though, a young new board member, maybe sorry for having said that to me, ran the campaign that raised that $10,000 for that new roof. Just a year later, which was 10 years ago at our 30th anniversary, we learned of the deadly attack on young Matthew Shepard. It was on this anniversary, 30 years, that same night, we learned of it. After dinner, the youth group and youth leaders took the tarp that had been on the roof during all that rain of that previous year and made a huge sign that hung out in front of the church that said, "Pray for Matthew." When he died, Troy and MCCLA staffer Reverend Don Wilder went to the funeral in Laramie, Wyoming, and Jesse Jackson spoke at the rally and press conference in our sanctuary. The place was jam-packed on a Tuesday in the middle of a week. We held the vigil and memorial in front of the church, projected songs onto the side of the building, David Raybould, didn't we? And we spoke of the new repaired roof, from the new repaired rooftop to 5,000 people in the streets. MCCLA, you helped our people grieve and challenged the anger. We stood up against the violence. We've known wildernesses in 40 years, have we not? Briggs Initiatives, Anita Bryant, AIDS, fires, murders, vandalism, persecution, earthquake, Pete Wilson's vetoes, and Proposition 8. And we've seen the promised land of equal rights, marriage equality, strong, thriving institutions. But at 40 MCCLA, you have only just begun. There are places crying out for safety, safe space, and human dignity right here in North America. There are places that have no safe space, no sanctuary, no place where a young person can find community, hope, and friends, no welcoming churches, no PFLAG. The Latin ministry that you founded and have nurtured needs to be part of a plan to plant 100 ICMs in North America to an underserved community.